So there's a lot to work through on the means test. For Morris Blackburn lawyers, experience you can count on. The King's Gambit, we just simply have to zero in on yesterday, the anatomy of a thriller. Do you know, we have had 10 successful kicks for goal after the siren in a row. So the last person to miss was Harry Taylor, round 15, 2018 against the Dogs. And since then, we've gone Zach Toohey, Jeremy McGovern, Robbie Gray, Jack Nunes, Zach Bailey, Gary Rowan, Max Gawn, Jordan Dawson, Noah Anderson, and yesterday, Jamie Elliott.
There you go. So
doesn't count those who don't make the distance because they're speculative shots. These are line up to win the game. 10 in a row.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
We always cheer for the guy to kick
100%.
it because if he misses, the loss is on him.
Were you cheering for him to go in before the siren and veer out to the right, open up the angle?
Well, Gerard, as you know, I cheer for finance, and I was invested the other way.
Right.
But look, I love the finish. I mean, you would not have thought that was going to be available or an option. Was it better than the Nunes goal? So Nunes is on the other side, right foot to the boundary, and probably just as far out. So which one's better, Nunes or Elliott? The crowd at the game going crazy makes that a better, like all things, you know. You got 80,000, or not? I don't know how many people were there.
72,000.
72.
And all the Collingwood people are there to celebrate with immediately. Nunes is in enemy territory over in the west, and he has the full surge of his own players.
I think Jamie should have finished in the crowd. Was my only. He should
over the fence,
Green Bay Pack
surfing.
style.
Yeah, I
get
like
in
that.
there and have a bit of fun. That was fantastic, and I think when you talk about the game, so we just get back to Collingwood at the start of that last quarter, having to take risks, and they just started throwing the ball into the corridor, and every counter attack was either going to cost them a goal or get them a goal type play. And they just continued to get through. The way that their understanding of what's required at every moment, I think, is a coaching feat in itself. So Craig McRae's 20 weeks into his coaching career, and I doubt that during the pre-season period they would have done a lot of situational training. It would have been more method. This is how we want to look. This is how we want to attack. This is how we want to defend. One complements the other. Blah, blah, blah. I spoke to him, and it was at pre-season a fair bit this year. He talked about reprogramming them at contest. So it was a heavy contest phase. They had a defensive mindset, but he wanted them to defend differently, not as deep and not with the football. So there's a lot to learn through pre-season. So over the last few weeks, I went and watched them train 2 weeks ago. I told you last week I was driving past, and I just thought I'll pull over and have a look, and he sprung me. Anyway, they did the 30 seconds each way, up by 2 points, down by 2 points, work out how to play it, boys. So they do it in training. So this is a learnt skill. So I think that he's teaching them what's required, not teaching them how to play. You know, we hear a lot about coaches coaching perfection. Hey, Gerard, when you get the ball here, if there's an option there, we want you to do this. If there's an option there. So you get programmed for one specific play, whereas he's teaching them the game. Hey, we're 2 points down. What do you think we need to do? All right, we need to take a risk. Well, what's that look like? And actually get the player to develop a greater understanding of the game. So I think it's I haven't really seen this sort of coaching for a while. I reckon Alistair Clarkson did this, and maybe Craig's learnt that from Clarko. Teach them the game, and then you get a better product quicker. So it's an outstanding start to his coaching career. My only scare, and not to put a dampener on any of this, is that what do they achieve this year? What do they get to this year? They can win the flag, right? They can win the flag. But let's say they run just short of winning the flag. So whatever that looks like. And it's been an unbelievable start. They've won a lot of close games, so they got full toed odds out of that. An unbelievable first year from a first-year player. And their senior core players have been outstanding. So it will get harder from here. So we're having this conversation. Do they have to nearly achieve this year, given that they've had a lot of things fall their way? Now, I'm not saying luck. We've had a bit of fun with Craig. But it's such a fortunate year. how far can that take you? I don't know. You'd have to start to say they can win it, Gerard, with what they do defensively.
Yeah, and there's the mechanics, but then there's the intangible. There's just something going on there. So they were beaten yesterday. You could see the exhaustion that was setting in, and then Jack Crisp, go ahead football.
Yeah.
No matter what, I'm going ahead.
Yep.
Start on a run that you don't quite know how it's going to pan out or finish, and it changes the environment. You go back and pick up the moment with 12:46 to go on the clock and just watch what happens from there. And it changes rapidly. And then when you're living these experiences week on week, there's something to draw on. So what looks like it's flagging suddenly is graspable. And, bloody hell, who's ever heard of Carmichael?
Who's ever heard of Carmichael? What does that mean?
2 thumping goals. Like, you just don't think this is where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But they're all in. Every man must serve. And I ended up, you end up analysing it like an assistant coach with clips all over the place. And there are singular moments for nearly every player on the field who gets involved in it.
Well, who's ever heard of Carmichael? It was the sub, wasn't he, for the first 3 quarters?
Yeah, it's his third game.
Yeah. I think Craig's teasing us again. Like, if he plays the whole game, Gerard, how many would he have kicked? So he kicks 2 in a quarter. If he had have played the whole game, he might have kicked 6.
They're doing it with Johnson and Carmichael. It's a law firm up front, and they're getting it done.
It is exciting, and you have to get swept along with it. If you're a Collingwood fan, you should be so proud of what your boys are doing. I just off on a slight tangent. Just had a conversation with Bucks, because with Daniel Hoyne and myself at Champion, we go through. We're tracking. We're trying to find out, is there a way of getting ahead, working out trends ahead of time with football, which is difficult to do, okay? Because things change quite wildly week on week. But can you just run a course and find out where teams are at? So we've looked at the last decade of football, okay? And in doing that, had a conversation with Bucks that was last year the outlier for Collingwood over the last 5 or 6 years. And when you go through the numbers, the stuff we track with the footy, without the footy, clearance, and then post-clearance contest, so winning your own ball in general play, you'd have to say yes. So everyone's talking about Bucks, he left a great defensive model behind and blah, 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 and it was time to go and all that sort of stuff. And look what Craig's done with this same group. Well, this group's been pretty good for the 4 previous years, aside from last year. And everything that could go wrong at Collingwood last year did go wrong, didn't it?
Yeah.
Off and on.
Which infected the on.
Yeah. So I sort of feel for Bucks a little bit in all this, because it's become a McRae versus Buckley discussion around the traps, which is a bit unfair,
right.
isn't it?
I haven't really that hasn't been my take out.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, I hope that the Collingwood fans that you're talking with are feeling that way, because this is a different Collingwood now, but it was such a great starting point. They've got so much scope, haven't they? Their experienced guys are in great form. They've got DeGoey and Grundy to come back, so now they're going to have some genuine selection pressure. I wouldn't be rushing DeGoey back in. I think these small forwards are doing a great job. People come for me last week when I mentioned Bianco. Now, I mean, I don't know whether he had a great day or not, but you have a look at that last play and you think, well, that's real head in the game stuff, What does the team need me to do?
Yeah.
I'm not getting off that boat in any hurry. I'm riding that all the way.
Ben Rutten in the aftermath, David King.
Yeah, I don't agree with any of that. I'm pleased we put ourselves in a position to win the game. Gerard, you just win that game. You just win that game. You don't have your captain on the bench for starters. Close games need leadership. They had him on the field for 60 minutes in the second half in succession, and then they had to give him a break at the end of the match because he was spent. That's poor management, and that's on your strength and conditioning staff. That's on the guys at bench level. He's standing right next to them. What are you doing down there? So if you can't manage that, then your other leaders have to engage. The 3 prime leaders of the Essendon Football Club were ready to run in. They were creeping in to hug the goal scorer. That's not leadership. That's for the first gamer to run in and do that. The club's a mess. And there's no other angle to start than comparing what McRae does and what Rutten does.
And the AFL world put its best foot forward across the weekend, primarily yesterday at the MCG, but we'll work our way back through the Dogs win over the Demons and what that might mean. And just a pulsating affair at Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide are going to miss the finals. So what to do with that? That's a curiosity in its own right. Just before we go any further, Kingy, so the maths are playing a big role today. So a mathlete, Andrew thinks the best of the best, a mathlete. A Pythagorean, that's from Joseph, with a salute to Pythagoras.
I like it.
According to Google, a genius mathematician is called a mathematician. That's from Craig. Not sure Craig's in the spirit of it. And Philip, the smartest people are called an actuary. So Actuary Adam, perhaps, is our man from here.
We're going with actuary.
How unlikely was it that Collingwood would conjure an end-to-end kick-in goal to determine the match? And I did. So it took 13 seconds to move the ball down the field. And Pete Ryan recounted that it took 10 seconds in the 89 preliminary final for Langford and Schwab to get the ball to Buckanara.
Mm. And I'd go as far as to say in 1989, they wouldn't have done any situational training, Gerard. They were lucky to get to training in those days. So prior to this game, 1 in every 40 kickouts at Collingwood resulted in a goal.
Right.
1 in every 40. They'd kicked 4 goals from 150 kickouts.
So there's a 2.6% chance that this ends well, and that's not taking into account game situation and clock.
Now, before the actuary rings me, I know it's just less than 40, but
yeah.
we're using round figures here. So 1 in every 40. So that you have a set. I'd go as far as to say for a set shot at goal, it would be less than that, because the fast point is harder to defend than the slow point. So you've got time to set up. Your leaders get things involved. You just lock that away. So when Ben Rutten says, I'm pleased that we pushed them, well, I don't know if the Essendon fans are that pleased, and I'm 100% sure the board wouldn't be pleased. And listening to that response, you're creating a disconnect.
They hadn't defended kicking well all day, as it turns out.
No. Well, they kicked, so like I said, 1 in every 40 odd. 3 goals won they kicked from 10 kickouts. Collingwood. This is my point with Essendon. Everyone keeps telling me they're going well, they're going to correct, wait out for next year and wait for this and wait for that. If nothing changes defensively, nothing changes. It's a rush to be the best team in the competition without the football, to be the hardest team to play against. Everyone is training and coaching with an urgency to be that team. I see Sam Mitchell trying to do it. I see Craig McRae trying to do it. Geelong have always done it. Melbourne are trying to get it back. I don't know if Essendon are. I don't know if it's a priority. So this is why you find yourself in these situations and having these sorts of press conferences. But enough of those teams, Stuart.
Into our categories.
Yes.
The big issues. I think the whole year was framed around Melbourne. From when we walked into it to where we are now. They've lost 5 out of 8. They've lost to Fremantle, Sydney, Collingwood, Geelong and the Bulldogs. Is it time to truly reassess and to worry about Melbourne?
So we get a lot of feedback in here, Gerard. So after about 8 weeks, we sat back and said, how are they going? So I reckon they're going at 70%, but their best is still 50% better than everyone else's. That's gone. So they haven't played. They've played 1 game for the year, really, with severe anger, and that was against Brisbane, and that was brutal, and that was as good as we've seen for some time. So outside of that game, their whole profile now just reads of a nice, ordinary team, a good AFL team that can threaten at centre bounce clearance and the odd clearance, the odd boundary throw-in or the odd ball up. But outside of that, they are just an average team right now. And we are on the premiership runway. So the last 6 weeks of the season, you don't magically hit form come September 1. You need to build into it. It's like a plane taking off. You just don't take off. You've got to build into the premiership runway. So we've sort of had a look at the numbers, and we've got a guide that's the last 5 to 6 weeks. You build, and then you go. And okay, there can be some injury impact and all that, so just put that little asterisk there. Players coming back, players falling out, clearly. But I look at Melbourne, and I talk about templates. I mean, you're a unique product for a period of time. So when we're doing something different, you've got to win the flag. That's always been so. Clarko brings in the cluster. You got to win. You got to win it that year because you know what? Every other team's going to have an off season to look at what you've done, steal parts, work out how to defeat it. When you're the best, you get picked apart more than anyone else. I think Melbourne. There's now different templates on how to beat Melbourne, and I think the number one template that's been adopted is to not kick the ball back to Max Gawn and Luke Jackson down the line.
Yep.
To go around them. So the good teams have gone around Melbourne. Try to use angles a little bit short then over. The Dogs on the weekend they had a principle of lasering your passes, and if we miss them, we miss them. But we're not gonna give the ball back to Max Gawn down the line because everything else is set up off that from a Melbourne point of view. Win it, and then the runners get involved, and the game goes from first gear to fourth gear straight away. Langdon charging, Spargo charging, Pickett on the end, and then in quickly to Bailey Fritsch, who's unstoppable when he's got that space. So if you turn the ball over lasering through the angles and trying to switch to the other side, you know what? You might give the ball back, but you don't give it back to Melbourne the way they are set up to win it back. And you may not pay a price. So I think that they've been picked apart so heavily now that they've been forced into change. It's a bad time to be forced into change. So their advantage, you could mount a case that their advantage has lasted a full season of last year and 12 weeks of this year. So it's had a 35-game lifespan. Do they have to tinker, or do they just have to get better? I don't know if it's about getting better at what you do, because what they do is what they do. So we know what they're trying to do. So they're brutal at centre bounce clearance. They kick 6 goals from centre bounce clearance on the weekend. You average about 1.5. So that's a massive advantage. They can still win a game by dominating scores from clearance, but I don't know right now if they can win a game defensively. And if you can't win games defensively, you can't win preliminary finals. And that's all we track. Can you win a preliminary final playing like this right now? Right now, I have no faith in Melbourne winning a preliminary final.
And that's a big shift from where we've been.
So paint the darkest picture. Okay, so there's a high likelihood they could finish out of the 4 now. If they finish 5th, who's going to finish 8th, Gerard? The team that's just rolled them?
Yeah.
That have, whether you like it or not, I mean, the blowout, the margin at the end of the grand final wasn't a great reflect. The game was awesome to watch. I'm not talking that down at all, so don't come at me with that. But for a large part of the first 3 quarters, the Dogs are in that game. So let's just say 2.5 quarters to 1.5 quarters for the grand final. And then on the weekend, you'd have to say 3 quarters to the Dogs, 1 quarter to Melbourne. So they're pretty much a 50-50. It would be unfathomable for Melbourne not to be part of the final second week, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But right now, it's a discussion. Their game is so far away from where it was defensively that it's not the same team. It's not. And I know that there's players to come back in, and we talk about that a lot, but it's too late to change. You can only just get better at what you do. But if it's been worked out, Gerard, it's a bad space to live in.
If you were holding a candle for the Bulldogs and you felt like I'm just not ready to give up on this candle just yet, then Saturday was the night that we've been waiting for months on a whole lot of fronts. Not only the collective, but the true arrival of Jamara Ugle-Hagan, who is the best bit of the weekend. Possessions 9/10 of the law. 1 win against Geelong in Geelong or Fremantle at Marvel really should do it for the Dogs now. They come home, Hawthorn and the Giants, 2 teams that they have recently beaten. They were faced with the prospect of needing to win 2 of 3, and they took the scalp that they needed to on Saturday night.
Yeah, we talked about this on AFL 360 last week.
Don't sleep on the Dogs.
Don't sleep on the Dogs. Don't sleep on the Dogs because they are bloody dangerous. And if you allow McRae to do his thing, and he's having another fantastic season, and Bontempelli we're all waiting for Bont to get that absolute prime level football going again, and he did it. He did it when they needed him most. The thing with Jamar Ugelhagen, I showed some vision last night. Everyone will show his goals, and everyone will talk about his goals. He's always been a goal kicker as a junior, but they've been dropping him or leaving him out of the team because his lack of competitiveness for the marking, but the absolute pack marking contest. On the weekend, he charged into packs, not to mark the ball, but to disturb the intercept markers, to shift the pack, to take trauma, physical pain, knowing that all it was going to do was create a spilt ball. Now, I take my hat off to that. That to me is the biggest shift in Jamara. Not the marks, not the goals, but the team just need me to do what Norton's been doing and crash the pack for my boys. So they'll show that today at the Dogs review. It won't be the goals. It'll be, have a look at what he's done for you here.
Yep.
He set this goal up for Cody, or he set this goal up for whoever. Doesn't matter. It is that's infectious. That builds. So everyone's talking about, the kids arrived. That's what I'm pointing at. So they become a pretty scary group now. And I think they've got the ability, and I've been talking about Norton going back for weeks. Maybe it's Bruce. I mean, Bruce started as a centre-half back. They've got options now. They've got a few options, and I'm rapt that they've kept their season alive. I thought it was a winnable game for them. So let's wait and see where it takes them. But the problem with the Dogs of the first 15 weeks is they can beat anyone, but they can get beaten by anyone.
Yes.
So let's see if they can find a bit of consistency over the next few weeks and do what they should do.
They've given themselves a chance. Richmondy, eh? Richmondy. With a shout out to Will Anderson, who diagnosed this years ago.
He diagnosed.
And then it went...
We're very medical today.
Then it went into... it was sort of resolved for a long time. It's back, and it's back with a vengeance. It's the worst bit. They've left 10 points on the table in 3 rounds and have slipped to 10th. It felt like when we left on Friday night, both teams had lost. And as it turned out, Fremantle lost their place in the top 4 and Richmond lost their place in the top 8.
But have you lost faith in Richmond?
Yeah.
You have?
Well, that's who they are. So I keep being told their game's in great order. No, it's not. There are elements of their game that are in order, and this part is not. And this part is, it is an equal but disproportionate part of the rest of their game because it is killing them.
No, their game's not in great order, and all the stuff we track, but their system still allows them to operate at a reduced capacity and put themselves in winning positions. So I agree with you somewhat. I reckon I still would hate to play them for week 1 of the finals. If they find a way to finish 8th, Gerard, can you imagine Melbourne versus Richmond in an elimination final? Oh, what a disaster if you're a D's fan. Look, I think that Fremantle and now the discussion from I probably watched that game from a Fremantle point of view more than a Richmond point of view.
Should we pitch them into the pressure index?
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about Richmond and they're pretty easy and obvious to assess. I reckon they've just blown opportunities. As simple as that. They should have won that game. I'm fascinated how Andrew Brayshaw, who's the Brownlow medal favourite, can be stuck on the bench for 8.5 minutes when the game's in the balance. I can't have that. And if the ball's on the other side of the ground and stuck at stoppage on the other side, I can wear that. But I think you go to the extreme level to get a guy of that calibre back on the field. Or you taper or shape his breaks or his rests to a point where there's no way he can't play the last 15 minutes of football. Had the same discussion about Heppel. Let's have it about Brayshaw. So 8.5 minutes is too long. And they had the play right in front of them. They just had to get one off to get him on. Sacrifice a half-forward flanker to get the Brownlow medal favourite back on the ground. That's one talking point. The second talking point was the sub. Where did you sit on that discussion with the sub coming on for the Tigers? Tall off, small on.
Yes, we did have a laugh about this on Crunch Time, that he was subbed out through tallness.
Yes.
Which was, I think it was Daniel Cherney's line. Who? Dan Cherney? Yeah, it was such a good line from Friday night. So I'm not obsessed about the sub. Other people are tracking it. There's a really obvious move next year. We either have 5 interchange or we have a proper sub that you can activate at any time. But it has been, there's been tacit endorsement for months that you can really use this however you like.
Yeah, and it doesn't whack us in the face until it happens in a final. I think this is something you can have a talk to the 8 competing clubs in a final series and say, hey, if you do anything here outside the code with the sub, you hold them to a higher penalty, whether it be something significant. Like in the NFL, they don't muck around. $1 million fines. You want to muck around with the rules? You want to tamper? Go right ahead. You might win a final doing it, but we're going to come down hard. You might lose a first round pick or a $1 million fine. That's what they do in the NFL. We don't do that here. We warn and we warn and we warn. I don't want a team losing a final because they've got a fresh player coming on for the last 20 minutes and create an advantage. I don't want that. So let's start that again. What does it mean for Nathan Fyfe?
Yeah, so this is incredibly untimely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give him much of a chance of being an influence come finals time. So he'll have to play, but he's disjointed at the moment anyway. And now to get another interruption, he desperately needed the last 4 weeks of this season to run into something that might be effective.
So the two that I'm really tracking are Fyfe and Dangerfield. They're coming off similar limited preps, and can they rise and peak for the month of September? Now, what's Fyfe play? He's played 6 games for the year. Look, it's going to get harder and harder as the weeks roll on, but. What do you do? Do you do what Richmond did a few years ago? It's always the discussion for us is, do you say, okay, he's not playing for the last 4. He'll have a game in the pre-finals bye and then roll into the finals. So you absolutely take a repeat of the injury or a recurrence of the injury off the table, or do you just say, no, it's a standard 21 days and we roll and take that percentage of risk? Which way do you go?
I'm desperate to play him in the last home and away so he's not first up in a qualifying final or an elimination final, which is actually where they find themselves at the moment.
Yeah,
I think first up in an elimination final is even for a champion of the game of this preparation is going to be an incredibly difficult ask.
So when he come back and started forward, everyone said, oh, you got to put him in the midfield. Oh, just let him run. But the trust in this midfield group to do it without him now provides a benefit they would not have had, a luxury they would not have had they just thrown him straight back in. So good coaching around him, a big challenge now. He's probably going to be the most tracked person in Western Australia for the next 21 days.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you've got these 2 champions of the game who are on tight timelines with Dustin Martin when we see him again and where Richmond might be, but we know that the Dockers are going to be in the finals. But what sort of shape can Fyfe be in?
Start thinking Sydney, Gerard. They're a force. I know they sit down the table a little bit, and that's okay, and they do things a little bit differently. They've got a young man up there, Tommy Papley, who's playing some of the best football in the comp right now. He's going in at centre bounces. He's playing pseudo full forward, and when he's not full forward, he's centre half forward. He puts on unbelievable pressure. He's the energy of that footy club. When he's on, they're on. That first quarter will be replayed at Sydney for weeks. They didn't allow the Adelaide Crows. The Crows were okay. The Crows were actually okay and got absolutely smacked. The highest scoring quarter since 1997. It's just ridiculous. So I love the way they play. Their small forwards, they put on a pressure that you just really can't work through. So they had 22 forward 50 tackles. The AFL average is 10. They had 22. And the guys that laid them were their leaders. Everyone talks about Heaney's class. He did 5 forward 50 tackles. Franklin was in one of those angry moods where he just mauled everyone. He enveloped them as he tackled them.
He was just picturing everyone as Kane.
He tackled like a top 200 player, Gerard. And Papley's the other one that I wanted to mention. So he laid, I think, 3 or 4 forward 50 tackles. So it's their top liners that do it. So when they look across at those youngsters, they say, hey, Will Hayward, if I'm doing it, you can do it. And I just think it's a brilliant way to look. Everyone's talking about Chad Warner and individuals. It's not really, they don't really operate like that. They need one to light up from a clearance point of view. And that will be a concern against the best teams. But the way they move the ball, the way they defend, and the attitude in which they play with, you've got to start talking about Sydney right now. And if you're doing a top 3, top 4 players in the comp, Papley is in there.
He had the rare feat of kicking a centre clearance goal where there were 2 possessions, and he had both of them.
Yeah, he said stuff, and I'll do it a lot. It was amazing. It was amazing to watch. But he's a unique player. He is a unique player, and I think he had 12 score involvements. I think he's the number 1 score involvement player the last 6 weeks. If he's not, he's second or third. So right now, I keep saying, if you haven't got a plan for Papley, you're not doing your job.
And you think this will stack up? This meets PFI the way they're doing it?
Yeah, and they've taken some big scalps already this year. Their record against top 8 teams is really strong. They beat Geelong way back in round 2 when we had the Buddy's goal, the 1,000th goal. So the 60-minute last quarter, they've beaten Fremantle, they've beaten Melbourne.
Yep, Fremantle in Perth, Melbourne at the MCG.
Yeah, so they've done it. I mean, there's not much they haven't exposed in terms of their form. I really like the way they play, and it's more about denying the opposition than it is about absolute scoring. But gee, they can put it on the board quickly.
David King with the Monday means test. We have to do the seedings at the climax of this on how they present now. So we were in furious agreement last week as how it settled.
We won't be agreeing this week.
No, and Melbourne are going to have to keep moving backwards down the rankings. Curiosity is Port Adelaide is if you can play that third quarter and that game, there are debates all over the place. You touched on the sub rule. So the Ginnivan rule is part of that. Tom Atkins move in the midfield under what they got right. That might be one of the most right of the season. Port Adelaide are in the mathematical possibility territory. They are the curiosity, I feel, that some of what they did on Saturday is right up there. So in consecutive weeks, they've gone the distance with Melbourne and Geelong. They're not going to be in the finals.
Gerard, at 0-3, you get smashed for saying things early. 0-3 said that's it. They may leak into a final series. They may finish 8th. Absolute best finish 8th. It just gets too hard. It ended up being 0-5. Even 0-3 it was a problem, 0-5. So it doesn't really matter how well you're playing at the back half of the year. They're the facts. They played the best football in that third quarter that Geelong have seen for the year. Kicked 8 goals in the third quarter. Charlie Dixon was a force. He went into beast mode. So that game of what's that game twice? I was fascinated by how fast and frantic they were early. You know, all their star factor players were getting involved. I love what Power Pepper's done this year. He's turned himself into a genuine, really good, solid AFL footballer. Not a guy that just drops in and out of games. He was brilliant early, but in the end, you say Geelong just too strong, just too settled, too organised. Found a way to gather and then get back to what they do best. And their delivery, their ball delivery inside 50 is the reason why they will win the flag this year. Because they don't just they don't just bomb the ball in, they don't just kick the ball in. Every time it goes in with a level of care that the forward has the advantage position. Whether it be weighted over the top for Hawkins to muscle his man underneath the ball, or whether it's an 80% kick rather than a 100% flat-out kick, just to chip it to the leading player, or left side for the left side, if required. They just kick the dominant position all the time. Now, it's a skill we don't talk about often enough. So I love their ball movement inside forward 50. They did some things, Port. We're all looking for templates. We're looking for reasons why. There was a concerned look on Chris Scott's face at three-quarter time when he went out to Mitch Duncan. He said, "What are they doing with you here? What's happening? How can we get through this? What's going on out here?" I love seeing that. We always focus on the coach when he comes out and bursts the group, But if you have a look at that three-quarter time break, everything's measured, everything's calm, and it looks to me, you have a look at it yourself later on, or if you get a chance to watch the replay, guys, watch it. It's just a conversation of this is what I reckon we can do. Duncan says, I reckon we can go bang, bang, bang. And all of a sudden, things get rolling again. And in the last quarter, they're able to kick, 4 goals for from 15 entries and put the game to bed. It's hard not to love what Geelong are doing. You know, it's hard. It's hard to win on the road. Hard to win against a really good team. Port were a serious football team on the weekend. That's their best, but it's not as good as the best in the comp.
So they got that right. The move of Tom Atkins into the midfield is, I wouldn't have believed that it could have this sort of dividends. And his post-game interview is just splendid. He owes it to the players that he's keeping out of the team to meet these levels, to do this job. It was a beautiful way of framing his responsibility within the club.
Yeah, you need that next level of player, though, don't you? You need to have 3 or 4.
So they looked thin in the midfield through the first half of the season.
Yeah, and they probably still do look thin in the midfield. But they don't rely on one player. That's the scariest part about Geelong. Like in the past, we've said, get to a final. We need Dangerfield. Does he have to play forward because they haven't got enough options here? They haven't got this, haven't got that. Does he have to play in the midfield because they haven't got? So it becomes a discussion about Patrick Dangerfield. Not one person in their right mind is saying that Geelong win the flag because of Dangerfield right now. They're not saying it because of Hawkins. They're not saying it because of Cameron. They're naming 10 guys. And then all of a sudden you're leaving out Atkins. Now you want to throw Atkins, it becomes 11. You throw Stengel in, becomes 2. So they got a great spread of contributors that make it impossible to say, okay, we're going to clamp him. Mitch Duncan's role across half-back, wing, whatever you want to call it, is significant to the way they play. Zach Tui is having another incredibly solid season. De Koning is right up there in the Rising Star voting. I think people are falling in love with Reece Stanley again. He's been the whipping boy for the last 5 campaigns. So there's a lot to love about the spread of Geelong and how they're sharing the spoils.
So just give me a closing word on Port Adelaide and the curiosity that they represent, because pretty soon it's going to be about what do they do next.
Port Adelaide?
Yep. So they're going to come out of this season knowing what. I think that's the curiosity with them.
Well, I think the only question for Port Adelaide to get an answer on is Ken Hinkley the man to take this group forward, or is this the year that says, you know what, shake hands, no ill feeling, you've done a great job with our football club, got us off the canvas, and we had a couple of opportunities to win it. We've missed the finals. We've probably got to go backwards a fraction to go forwards again. They're going to lose Amon. Boyle reports he's going to the Hawks. So maybe there's a little bit of back to the draft to replenish a little bit. So I don't see them returning to flag contention next year. They may. I think the others have gone past them. So does that mean, would Ken say, look, maybe it's a good opportunity for me to give you clear air and go and coach another team for 10 years? I think Ken's a wonderful coach. Don't want him to be out of the system. But if there's an opportunity to go to GWS, hey, it would be great for all parties. North Melbourne, great for all parties. Don't know if it's that easy. He's in contract. He's got 1 more year, hasn't he?
He does.
Yeah. So there's no desperate need to rush him out of the joint, but we've got to learn to handle this a bit better.
It's just got to trying to make the assessment. Are they still in contention or not? That's for them. So we'll all have a view on the outside. They've got to make that decision internally.
Well, what needs to happen for them to become a premiership team? Like Rosie and Butters have to go from very good to great players in a heartbeat. Do you see that? Rosie, you can see it happen. Do you see that with Butters at the moment? I don't think he's going to go past Boak in the next 20 games. He may, but right now Boak's in front of Butters. You lose Amon means you've got to find another player. Charlie Dixon's another year older. They got an aging bracket at the top, and they got some good youngsters. And there's a bit of a hole in the middle. Is Ollie Wine's still the player he's still Brownlow medal caliber? So there's so many questions that I don't think you can absolutely say they're a contender next year right now.
Just give us your best 60 seconds on the Ginnivan rule as our debate. This will be rich midday madness territory, I'm sure. It's not my jam. What's your view?
No, I know it's not your jam. The AFL have made mistake after mistake this year with these sorts of issues. You just come out and say, we're going to crack down on this, and if you do A, B, and C, that is it, right? And then you stick to that. Now, you can't have rules for some and rules for others. And that's where we are right now. So I love the fact that the lifting of the arm one, so that's a tell. We have ruckmen that look at each other. If you take your eye off the ball, ruck free kick against. We just pay it because, hey, the eyes were the tell. If the arm comes up, then I think I would pay a free kick against that player. That would be my change next year, because then you are changing behaviour. We take it out of the game, because if you give away if Jack Ginnivan gives away 3 free kicks in a row to the other team because of that mechanic, Craig McRae's not playing him. So if you want to play, get rid of that. It'll go in a heartbeat. But because it's play on, then there's no price to pay. So they've meandered through this mess, the AFL, and now we are nowhere. I don't even know the rule anymore. The players be thinking, what the hell? He almost got decapitated on the weekend, and no one can tell me whether it was a free kick or not.
No, I think we can.
No, we had to go to the replay. We had to slow it down. Did he lift his arm? Did he get taken high? It's a mess, Jared.
Would have been. I think it'd be very dispiriting for Jack at the moment, who might have sort of clocked the game in the first 8 weeks, and the game is taking a vengeance on him, in spectacularly unfairly, I think. And it's not just the AFL that's played a role in this. There's a whole lot of people who should be thinking about what. So what? What have we contributed to over the past few weeks?
The AFL set the rules on this.
I feel like this is one of the provisional weeks, halfway in between where we are and where we're going.
Where we're going.
Last week, though, I reckon the 4 made perfect sense. This week, it's a bit more. You can be cute with the seedings this week.
Be cute. No, I think you got to wipe your eyes this week and just see for what it is. Melbourne right now are the 4th best team in the comp, I think.
Okay.
And they're going to sit at 4 for me.
Melbourne are in the play-in game for me.
Not even in your 4.
Melbourne and Freo, winner goes in.
Oh, you got a wild card.
My wild card, I'm going to put the Bulldogs at 4.
You've always wanted to go to 6. That's your sneaky way of going to 6.
Last 8 weeks, Dogs are 5 and 3, Blues are 4 and 4, D's are 3 and 5.
You've gone the Dogs.
Just before they play Geelong and Freo, just in case.
I like how you do this.
Dogs at 4.
Yep.
3.
Carlton for me. I was seriously impressed with what they did yesterday. I know it's only against the Giants, but I like their star factor players just leading the way every week.
Sydney at 3 for me. That's where they were last week. Just stay there. I like their run in. The top 4's at their mercy. 2?
They're better than 3, Jared. They're 2. The Swans are 2 for me. And just to clarify, Papley, the number 1 score involvement player the last 5 weeks in the competition. They got wild cards. They play with an attitude, a real anger. I love it. They can win the flag, Jared.
Oh, I've seen your error from a long way out, King. I feel for you. Collingwood's at 2. They've won 9 in a row. You can't deny 9 in a row.
No, that's true. No, Frayne, McRae.
You accidentally left them out, didn't you?
No accident. No, it's harder to get into my 4 than it is yours. And top is Geelong, who I did.
Hang on, who'd you have to?
Sydney.
Yeah. Sorry.
Top's the Cats.
Yep.
And I saw your error a long way out. I put them in very early, the Cats.
You did. You were first onto the Cats, I reckon.
Yeah, they were $9 at the time, Jared. So, no, they're playing some serious footy. And, again, the spread of contributors. You cannot lock away one man at Geelong and expect that will impact the game.
Yep, Geelong at 1 for me. So I'm Geelong, Collingwood, Sydney Bulldogs. You are Geelong, Sydney.
Carlton, Melbourne.
Excellent.